All right, everybody, welcome to Nice J with JJ Smith. Thanks for listening. We're in the mood to be thankful this morning, and in that spirit, we decided to give the home team here in Phoenix some love with this episode. We're thankful we have at least an entertaining and interesting team to watch, and we're not so far languishing in the bottom of the West. We're going to do a little status check with the local squad here in the Valley, but first, a word from our sponsor. Just kidding. We still don't have one. All right, let's talk the Phoenix Suns. The Suns were predicted to finish near the bottom of the West in the first part of the year, with ESPN giving them just a 1.5 chance of making the playoffs and a projected win total of 31.8 before the season started. Clearly, the big trades were giving up Kevin Durant to the Rockets and Beal to the Clippers, while KD is still doing KD things in Houston, and they're looking really tough. Beal is injured and out for the season for the Clippers. Literally adding insult to injury, Beal remains the highest paid player on the Suns roster. Ouch. But those two moves freed up the Suns to acquire Jalen Green and Dillon Brooks from the Rockets, and Mark Williams as well. And of course, the team has a new coach, former Nets, Lakers, and Cavs assistant Jordan Ott. For better or worse, this isn't last year's team. Right now, the Suns are 11-7 and 6th in the Western Conference. They are a full 6 games back from the 17-1 OKC Thunder. But we're closing in on being a quarter of the way through the season. And we'll be doing a Q1 look at the league next week. But let's see how the Suns got here and what a reasonable projection for the rest of their season might look like. First, Coach Jordan Ott. Ott replaced Mike Budenholzer after he was fired following a disappointing 36-46 season last year, of course missing the playoffs in his lone season in the Valley despite having the league's highest payroll. When you have the league's highest payroll and you don't perform on the court, something's going to give. And that was Budenholzer's. Ott went to Penn State for his bachelor's and Michigan State for his master's in athletic administration before embarking on a 12 to 13-year career that he's had. That school is important for later on. He started with the Hawks as a video coordinator under, you got it, Mike Budenholzer. He was an assistant coach under Atkinson, Jacques Vaughn, and Steve Nash. He ran the offense for Nash during his tenure with the Nets. And Ott was the assistant under Darvin Ham with the Lakers in 22 through the 24 season. And he returned to work with Kenny Atkinson as assistant for the Cavs during the 24-25 season last year. From reading a lot of sources, Ott was well regarded for his player development and game strategy and implementing creative offensive schemes with a calm demeanor and attention to detail. I don't really have anything to back this up, but it seems like being a video coordinator is a good first step for future coaches if you want to go that route. It was the Michigan State connection that had most local fans worried. I admit I was one of them. While well known in NBA circles, Ott was relatively unknown to the casual fan, and most worried he was almost like a Nepo hire because of Matt Ishbia's Michigan State connection. And I admit, I had similar worries, but was more concerned about what happened with Nash in the Nets, since Ott was running that offense for the team that had, mixed results. I think that team was better in retrospect than what it felt like in the moment. But there were some concerns there, and especially, we didn't really necessarily want to have another Michigan State person in the organization, but we do. But what has been obvious in the first 18 games is that Ott is a great coach for this particular team, and most importantly, their best player, Book, has bought in and seems to support him. Ott's calm, steady, seems to be pretty smart, and has this young team playing together. Offensively, they move the ball way more than last year, and it tends to find someone wide open. Right now, the Suns are 5th in the league in three-pointers made, 10th in threes attempted, and 3rd in three-point percentage. So even if the makes settle closer to the attempts, that would still give them, put them pretty solidly in the top 10. The other big change in approach is a much deeper rotation with at least 5 bench players contributing every game, if not more, and much more defensive pressure, often full court, harassing the other team for 90 feet, which, has a lot of benefits. It's irritating. It's hard, obviously, if you're that other team. But it also takes seconds off the shot clock from their opponents to start. And that's what I've seen is a lot of teams, instead of starting with 18 seconds, they're starting their offense with 14 or 13 seconds. So they're chopping off this time off of the opponent's shot clock. While they've been down big in a few games, the Suns do tend to play till the end, most notably in the recent game against the Timberwolves that saw the Suns climb back from 8 points down with only 45 seconds to go. They, of course, closed that game with a 9-0 run, featuring a great hustle steal by Gillespie, a big 3 and fast break bucket from Jordan Goodwin, and, of course, the game-winning 1-foot jumper from Gillespie off the right side. Not to mention the team had a timeout saved for the tight game, and game management has been excellent under Ott. So strategically, the Suns are moving the ball better offensively, often turning the defense from one side to the next and back, and getting a lot of open threes, which they are making at a 38% clip as a team. They're pressuring defenses and forcing them into a tighter shot clock with a lot of turnovers. The Suns are second in the league in steals, in large part to jumping passing lanes aggressively in the half court and punishing point guards or whoever's pretending to be a point guard on the other team. The Suns are long and athletic and young enough to bring that energy early in the season. Plus, they go deep in their bench, so their players are a bit more fresh than what we might have seen in the past. They are also well managed from a timeout, challenge, and roster standpoint. So that's all a bunch of positives for the Suns. There are reasons to be realistic, and I'm going to give you a few more reasons to be optimistic after that. So a reason to kind of tamper your expectations is strength of schedule. To be fair, the opponent quality so far this season has favored the Suns. Just a few games ago, the Suns' strength of schedule was the second most favorable with an opponent win percentage of just .435. Also, the easiest strength of schedule has been played by OKC with an opponent win percentage of .418, and nobody talks about that, of course. My favorite quote from Reddit about this was, "It's unfair that OKC doesn't have to play the Thunder like every other team." Point made. The rest of the season, the Suns' schedule does get a lot more difficult with a .525 winning percentage and the third toughest overall. It's also important to note that the total delta between the toughest remaining schedule, OKC at .535, and the easiest remaining schedule, Houston at .468, is only .067. So the delta between the easiest and hardest schedule, just given the teams, is pretty small, but can sway a few wins here and there and make the difference of making the playoffs or not. So one reason to be a little more realistic about the Suns for the rest of the season is their strength of schedule gets a lot tougher. Another reason is right now the Suns are maximizing Dillon Brooks. How much can that continue? Can that continue at the pace it currently is? That's really the question. Up to this point, the Suns are getting the very best. Yes, he pesters and disturbs opponents and provides a toughness the Suns have certainly missed. Their last enforcer, that goes back to the finals team with Jay Crowder. So this has been a nice change in personality. It's hard to overestimate the benefits of having a player like this on a team, willing to do the dirty work, but also smart enough to make it all a positive for the team. We all hate this kind of player until he's on our team, and that's just a fact. Dillon Brooks has been shooting the lights out in the past few games in particular, though his averages are about the same as his career numbers, so that should stay about the same. The biggest thing is he is probably, definitely taking way, way too many shots for the long-term success of the team. He's a career 14-point-a-game player on roughly 12.5 shots, but this year he's getting 22 points a game so far for the Suns on 17.5 shots. There's been a couple games he's well into the 20s in his shot selection. He has seen a huge jump in usage rate from his 2 seasons in Houston and has been assisted on a career low 50.7 of his field goals. So that means he's creating more of his shots. He's taking more of his shots. But he is registering the highest true shooting percentage of his career by a pretty healthy margin. His 3-point percentage is lower, 32% than what it was last season at 39.7, but he's also shot almost 58% from inside the arc, having never made half of his 2-point attempts in any of his other 8 seasons. I went to the last Suns-Spurs game, and he had several turnaround jumpers and really tough shots, and he's making them, and he's shooting them with confidence, and the team has confidence in him taking them. But for the long-term success of this team, this is as good as it's going to get with Dillon Brooks, and that's fine. That's not a knock. It's just an acknowledgement of how well he's playing and an assumption that this may not scale well for the rest of the season. Now, can he maintain it until Green comes back? Perhaps. And that would be good enough. If he can do that, that's awesome. He's kind of creating the bridge to that. But we might be getting the very best of Dylan Brooks to expect that continues at this rate. Certainly the number of shots he's getting, probably not. The next reason to be more realistic is the 3 percentage regressing to the mean. So I already mentioned the high rankings for threes attempted, made, and the percentage the Suns are enjoying. They do have a lot of players that can make these shots, especially as wide open as they've been. Sometimes I have to laugh when national broadcasters comment on a team that we know so much better because we're watching every game. A few weeks ago, Grayson Allen made a franchise record 10 3-pointers and scored 42 points. And that was in their 121-98 victory over the Pelicans. National ESPN guys showed a highlight reel of how open Grayson was, and one of my favorite podcasters, David Jacoby from The Ringer's The Mismatch, he went back and that was all he watched of the game was his threes and made a joke about how easy those threes were, basically insinuating that Allen had kind of an easy night. But what these guys miss, the fan that watches every Suns game wouldn't, is most of the Suns threes all season long have been pretty wide open. If you only watch that one game, it might seem like a fluke, but it's been a trend all season so far. Can the Suns keep getting these threes and hitting them at this pace? Statistics would say no, but if they can manage the drop to something reasonable, I think they can survive. But that's one reason to be a little bit more realistic. The last one is Booker can be trapped. The book on Book is to trap him. I see a lot of casuals asking what's wrong with Booker every time he doesn't score 35, which is kind of funny. He's just getting trapped and doubled almost always by every single team the Suns play. And he does the right thing. He passes out of it. See the point about the threes, the open threes above. That's why some of these threes are so open. They're doubling on Booker. But if you're going to be pessimistic about this team, you'd point to his struggle against this strategy or his willingness to get the ball to his teammates. He's no longer passing to Kevin Durant. So that passes off into a player who is, and I think the industry term is, less good, right? So typically Booker is in the top 10 of players who get blitzed the most. That means he gets doubled when he has the ball. Not always initially, but when he's going to shoot or when he's making his move. And he's had a tendency to pass to the closest perimeter player, which doesn't really stretch the defense as much as it could. And sometimes he doesn't utilize his screeners in a way that would give the Suns the advantage. So it's clear that teams in the NBA have decided they don't want Booker to beat him. His ability to get his against this strategy may well dictate the ceiling for this team. But we're going to see a lot of it, especially until Jalen Green gets back. But that leads us to a couple reasons to believe in this team. Jalen Green will eventually join the team. The Suns have had only 1.25, maybe 1.125 games with Jalen Green in the lineup. Local fans, having been through this with the Booker, Beal, Durant trio far too much than they wanted, are legitimately pessimistic about injuries these days. And maybe in a weird way, too much. But Green has a history of being dependable. The guy never missed a game in over 2.5 years before that right hamstring gave out when they were playing in China. That setback was made all the more bittersweet because in the one game that featured both Booker and Green, the Suns, they look good, scary good. Green dropped 29 points in, I think, 26 minutes on November 6th, with the Suns winning 115-102. In that game, there was a lot to be optimistic about. Green made the right reads, either taking his shots or making the right passes. Green attracts as much or almost as much defense as Booker, and when they play together, things open up for the both of them. You can't trap or blitz them both, so as long as they are willing to give it up, defense are going to have a tough time containing them both, especially with an offense that is spread out and dangerous from three all around the perimeter. Green himself has had the ball a lot as a creator. Like he has the ball, he holds the ball in his career so far. That's been his role. But if he can hit his own shots off the pass, well, that's good luck to the other defenses. He made the Suns look faster. Currently, the Suns are ranked 25th in pace, despite visually looking like they are playing faster. I think the reason for that is they speed up their opponents on the defensive end more than themselves, and they end up taking their time on offense. With Green, they were faster and more balanced out there. While Green's injury is a concern, and they projected a 4 to 6 week window before being evaluated, so that may mean he'll be out much longer. especially after re-injuring it. 6 weeks would be end of December. I think if he's back by All-Star break, that would be more reasonable, and if the Suns can keep the ship afloat until then, they may be rewarded. The other reason to be optimistic, the Suns have a point guard. All this preseason talk about point Booker, or at least Green and Booker splitting point guard duties, and while Book has played a lot of point, and he's certainly capable, they now have a legitimate point guard on their bench with Colin Gillespie. You can see how much of a steady hand he is running the offense. He penetrates and kicks, or he just uses the Nash dribble down low and kind of goes up to the other side, keeping the ball moving. He's good at finding the hot player. And defensively and on the boards, Gillespie doesn't, give up a whole lot, or at least as much as you think for his size. And the Suns just look better when he's out there. You go to the stats, and that it's backed up. As a starter and coming off the bench, the Suns are now plus 96 with Colin Gillespie on the floor this season, which is the highest plus or minus mark on the team. That translates to a plus 11.1 net rating in his 400 minutes. Without Gillespie, the team's overall net rating is negative 9.7, indicating a major drop-off when he's not on the court. He's almost doubled all the important stat categories for his career this season and is shooting 41% from three with a true shooting percentage of 58.1. And he competes for the ball with key steals and rebounds, of which he has over 4 a game. None of this feels forced or even really pushing the limits of this player, who has definitely found a home and is a fan favorite here in Phoenix. And to top it off, Gillespie is one of 3 players in NBA history to have 150 points, 75 plus assists, and 50 plus rebounds in their first 15 games of a season off the bench. And he joins Russell Westbrook and LaMelo Ball for that. I hope his career is more like Westbrook's personally, but either one would be fine for Gillespie, who no one really thought a whole lot of until probably the end of last season. Suns fans got a little bit of a taste of what could be, and we're seeing it this year play out. Another reason to be optimistic, this inside-out game. The inside-out, midi to 3 efficiency shooting may not be as much of a fluke as you might think. Yes, they are shooting a ton of threes, but they are also shooting a lot of middies. They are 4th in shots attempted from 8 to 16 feet, and 2nd in shots made from that distance. This isn't a huge surprise given the Suns' history of shooting the mid-range jumper when the Durant and Booker combo was working, but this should balance any fluctuation in three-point efficiency. That dual threat, bomb-away threes plus purposeful paint inside plays means opposing defenses can't just guard one or the other. When the shots are falling and the scheme is balanced, that tends to carry teams further than expected. Oddly, the Suns are almost last in shots taken and made from inside the restricted area, I think with inside like 6 feet, behind only the Celtics. You can do with that what you may, but I think there is an improvement possible here with Nick Richards and Mike Williams to really step that up as well. Another reason is right now there are some stinkers at the bottom of the West, and some surprising teams down there too. Between the Mavs, Kings, Clippers, Jazz, Mavericks, and Pelicans, 6 teams have 5 wins or fewer. It's early, but if some of those teams stay there, that reduces the number of teams making a run for those play-in games. Will the Jazz tank again? Can the Mavs right the ship? Will the Pels sink even further? Of those teams, I expect the Clippers to kind of figure things out. A few more of the teams currently in 9th and 10th, the Trailblazers and Grizzlies, aren't exactly lighting it up either. So maybe the Suns only need to beat these teams to get a much-needed playoff spot. Another reason to be optimistic is they can adjust how they play. Some of this is coaching and some of this is personnel, but they have a big, athletic, young team of kind of interchangeable players that are given game-winning game plans by their staff. No other game is more illustrative of this fact than their first win versus the Spurs and how they attacked Wemby and neutralized his impact on that game. I kind of look forward to future matchups with, the bigger NBA stars, Jokic, Shea, Doncic, and others, to see how the coaches change things up and see how the players can adapt for a winnable strategy. Not saying they'll beat all those games, but do they have a winning strategy? Do they have a chance? Can they compete with these teams, being a little bit more scrappier and lesser known? And then, the last reason is, hey, don't forget, we have Booker. Sometimes a team's success or lack of it can justifiably carry over to criticism of the best player on the team. The last few years have been a little rough on the Suns, and I think Booker himself, but the adjustment Book has made every few years is substantial. He's got a lot of new coaches, new schemes. He hasn't really been able to find a groove. That being said, he's still, despite that, one of the best 10 to 12 players in the league. I'd put him a little higher on that than the lower end. And I'd say given a lot of the players above him are physically more imposing, he's probably one of the top 6 or 7 skilled players in the league. He's regarded as one of the best scorers, good efficiency. He's developed into a more well-rounded player, improving passing and playmaking. His defense has improved significantly, a fact that has kind of flown under the radar. No one really talks about that too much, until the playoffs anyway. When Booker does make the playoffs, he's been one of the most dominant playoff scorers of his generation. Don't forget that. And then the team circumstances, the inconsistent team success and the narrative surrounding the Big Three experiment, kind of have taken away from what he's been able to accomplish. His bad games are still pretty good generally. He doesn't have a lot of stinkers. And when he does, he comes back and kind of shuts people up a little bit. But a healthy, engaged, and well-used Booker is a dangerous Booker. I don't worry about a game where he puts up 20-some points. I think he'll continue to figure out how to play against the traps, blitzes, and doubles, especially when the team is at full strength. And I'm telling you, Booker was one of the 3 best players on that Olympic run behind Durant and Curry. He's capable of stepping things up on both ends when it matters. The season is long, and all he needs is a chance to show it again come playoff time. Right now, the Suns are second in the NBA Emirates Cup West Group A with a record of 2-0, and they play the Kings tonight to go 3-0. That's an important game if they win, because the next time they play in the Cup, it's against the Thunder the Friday after Thanksgiving. So if nothing else, they've been one of the more interesting teams so far this season. Maybe they can capture that Emirates Cup just to kind of put a feather in their cap and see where the season goes. And that's not nothing. I'm excited to see where the rest of the season ends up for this team. They are watchable. They're definitely a league pass team to not miss. They play smart. They play hard. They play to the end. They have interesting players to watch. I think if you want to watch someone play hard on defense, just watch Ryan Dunn. He normally gets put on their best player, and he normally frustrates them quite a bit, and you can see the difference when he's off the court. He's a really fun watch. Gillespie's fun. If you're into point guard game, of course, Booker gets a lot of the highlights. Their bigs are much better than you expect. And, they have shooters, Royce O'Neal, Grayson Allen, when he's back. They're fun to watch them unconscious from long distance. And then you get Green in there, and everything's going to be a lot different for this team. So we'll see how it goes. 11-7 is much better than most people thought. If that kind of continues, you're looking at a 43, 45, 46, maybe if they get lucky, even a 50-win season, which would be huge. Probably going to end up being in the 40s if they can keep things the way they are. And that's not too shabby given how the early season projections were going. All right, that's it for now. Hope you enjoyed a little bit of look at the Suns. If you're in the Valley and beyond, we'll check back in with them later. We're going to come at you next week with a quarter season look at the league, what's rising to the top, issues, topics, things that I've been seeing, and as well as a little bit of a guide on how to watch an NBA game, which I think will be as equally as interesting. So give that a listen as well. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. Enjoy your friends and family. And remember, shoot or shoot.